Welcome to the third lecture of the 2015-2016, I believe that's the year's lecture series here at CoAD. I'll introduce our speakers in a moment, but first I feel it appropriate to send thanks, love, whatever, good vibes, out to a few people. As you probably have noticed, this document has appeared in our hallways and on our screens and everywhere else. And I wanted to thank Professor Kristen Deine. I don't even know if you're here, Kristen, but she is the designer of the poster. She tolerated patiently all of our back and forths and debating about when someone would come or someone would not come, and she's definitely a more patient person than I, and I think did a really beautiful work out of it. So if you're really eager to have these, and I know some of you really like to hang these things in your bedrooms and your kitchens, we have extra copies, studios, we have garages, dog houses. We have extra copies, and we would happily give them to you at a modest cost, free. Now, there are other ways, and I'm preaching to the choir here because this is how you found out there was a lecture today, right? You looked here and said, oh, look, that's happening today. But there are other places you can turn. The first page, I'd like to give another thanks. John and Jack, could you stand up? John Giraldi and Jack DeLaura. Talk about patience. Over the course of the last 5 months, 6 years, 7 decades, I don't know how long, a long time, right? We've been working together under cover of darkness to take the university's standard template for the website, which is, let's just say, assured and foreboding and very, very strict, and trying to find a way that we could appropriately present the creativity embedded in this place using that template. And I think that it's a tribute to their creativity and, again, their patience that they were able to put this site together as you see it today. You'll notice that, if I was on a Mac, I'd use my fingers and scroll up and down. On a PC, I'm just happy I'm not breaking this device. That you can play with it. It looks great on mobile phones. I'd hold mine up right now, but you wouldn't see it. But here's another place where you could see the lecture series poster again in all its glory, and just as importantly, see the folks that are coming to lecture and say, who is Stuart Hicks, Allison Newmar, right? And then this clicks, of course, to their website so that you can get more information about who they are. So hopefully this allows you to do a little bit of reconnaissance work either before the lecture or to wind up some conversations or to do a bit of research after the fact. So it's a useful tool there. And then the other part that I'd like, Marilyn, are you here? Where are you? I heard a yes. All right. This is much less patience because she only had to deal with me over the last couple of weeks, but still, good for you. She has recently taken ownership of the CoAD, LTU CoAD Facebook page. It's spanky new. I think she's done a really great job of forwarding content that's relevant and interesting. Here's another place where you could not forget about lectures. Right, that's right there. But also talk about open air drawing sessions and hear about DCDT and see one of our alumni has recently been selected by the Architecture League of New York for a fairly prestigious fellowship award. These sorts of things can come out there, which I think are interesting. So well done, Marilyn. I believe she also has a beat on Instagram and Twitter. So those of you that like to tweet, you should tweet with us. We could tweet together, and we look forward to doing that. I should be speaking right there, shouldn't I? I'm breaking the technology already. All right, well, I'll come over here now for the important non-jabbering part. All right, to our lecturers. Yes, Steve Rost.
Add to the thanks, just to let everybody know that Marilyn's a graphic design major. She's one of our New York designers. And John and Jack are interaction designers.
And also great people. Marilyn's a Gemini. John, Jack, you're both Aries, I believe. So bear that in mind as well. I don't know, Amy, when you were born, to whether you're Cancer or Taurus? Libra. So there you go. Now we're squared away. That's a really terrible introduction to the dean. I'm really in hot water. Thankfully, you're a really nice person. So it is my pleasure, truly, to introduce Interim Dean Amy Deines and Professor June Kim. As you likely know, because I've said it way too many times, I arrived here relatively recently, and it was one of my first acts in terms of the tenure promotion was to review Dr. Kim's dossier as he moved or applied from to become a professor, a full professor from associate professor. I could not lift the binder of materials. Actually, there were several binders of materials, and the binders were filled with accolades from students, from the profession, publications. You wouldn't know it because Dr. Kim would be the last person to brag about it, but the man is incredibly accomplished. And if you go into the communities of Detroit and mention his name, chances are someone will have heard of it, and even more likely it would be in a very positive way. Dr. Kim, the work that he's done is celebrated, not just in Detroit, but nationally and internationally, as is the work of his students. Interim Dean Deines, it's my pleasure to work with her and a number. I think you've done everything here. You've started as chair and then associate dean. I think you were a building manager for a second. Now you're interim dean. I don't know if there's anything that you've not done, and I'm pretty sure there's literally nothing you couldn't do. It's been my privilege to work with you as you've drawn resources from places I can't even imagine to execute probably one of the more significant moves of this college and this university campus over the last several decades, I would hazard a guess. The center, I had a privilege of touring it today. It's going to be stunning, and in my belief, it's probably going to be one of the more beautiful and probably useful facilities that the university leases or owns. And that's a credit to you, because you did that with your sweat equity. And so I want to thank you both for your efforts, thank you for what you mean to this college, and thank you both for speaking with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was very gracious. And as we know, with any great project, it takes an entire team and collaboration. Can you hear me in the back? Is that okay? All right. So before I get into this, because I have 30 minutes, and then June has 30 minutes, I want the folks who have been part of this project to stand up so I can formally acknowledge you. So Chris Stefani and Kristen Lusk and June Kim. Oh, hold on. There's a lot more. Aaron Jones, Scott Shaw. I mean, if Kate Roy was here, Kate. But it really has taken, a huge amount of effort from a variety of people who truly believe in the redevelopment of the city of Detroit. And more importantly, how can we as an academy play a formal role in that redevelopment? So again, I'm going to be moving fairly quickly. What I want to do is tee up what the Design Center means to us as a college, how we are able to evaluate a variety of insights based on asset mapping and looking at what we do well as a college and what things are happening in the city and layering those over and finding those kind of sweet spots. I'm teeing it up so that when June comes to speak, you understand that this is an umbrella that is provided really for all of you. And so the work over the past 3 years through fundraising, program development, is really about building on the strong foundation that I saw when I arrived here 4 years ago. So I do want to wear the hat of professor and executive director. I purposely left off interim dean because I really haven't had an opportunity to talk even to my colleagues about some of the work I've done in terms of research and how these initiatives, even though from an administrative standpoint, do support my interest in revitalization of urban areas. This is not working, so hold on, here we go. I wanted to walk around and I can't see. Is there someone up there that understands how to use this? It's on? No? Okay, forget it. So basically what we did was when I arrived here, there was existing programs that were working really well in the city. June Kim was running the Detroit studio. When I arrived, I developed a program called Detroit Shop in collaboration with other faculty, which really aligns multidisciplinary studios in relationship to a real project within the city. We also had a storefront gallery on Woodward Corridor right near Capitol Park. So in terms of insight, the ability to, again, look at these kind of low-hanging fruit pieces and understand that in terms of reputation, the College of Architecture and Design and Lawrence Tech was not given the credit I thought that was worth in terms of the amount of investment that we had created through our studios and the work our students were doing. So the idea was to come up with a center where all of these programs became consolidated. Not only for efficiency and shared resources, but again, to have a more formal presence in the city. So when people talk about the work of the academy and the role it plays in terms of higher education, that Lawrence Tech has a seat at the table. As a result, there's been a lot of really great press that, again, talks about the relationship of a technical institution like Lawrence Tech and its ability to be very decisive and tactical about the things that we do in the city. So this project started when I arrived. This is my 4th year, and it was about 3 years of fundraising. We decided as a faculty that we should develop the programs before we turned the lights on. And so the programs we were developing, again, was the consolidation of the Detroit studio, Detroit shop, an exhibition space, a research lab, a design incubator. And so these are the things that we've been fundraising for and developing. So when we turn the lights on, we already have the program dollars, and the development of the piece is already ready to go. So this is taken 2 days ago, as you can see. We are right. Oh. So this is Willis right here, and this is Woodward. They're tearing up the street right now for the M1. We're right in the middle of all the action. We're near MoCAD, Wayne State, Michigan State, U of M. And so along the Woodward corridor, we have a storefront gallery, which is open up to the 2nd floor. And then this is a conference room, studio spaces. And so this is just a shot in progress. We're supposed to be moving in, or we are moving in October. These are some renderings of the gallery space. Again, when specifically in terms of foundation dollars, there usually is some kind of vision or mission that we have to align with. So this space has been provided support by the Community Foundation. And so this piece really does have to act as a kind of contribution back to the community and a resource. So it really should be the front door of the center. It's an opportunity for faculty and students to disseminate their work, but it's also a resource for other community members to utilize as an asset. We will be having yoga on Friday mornings, if anybody wants to stretch. It'll be free for students and faculty. There's a lot going on. I mean, these are a draft of renderings. You know how these things go. But really, the idea is to show a very, very active space. You know, what our desire is that we really are kind of rubbing up against each other, and you really can't define the kind of the return on those investments based on the overlap of disciplines and professional guidance. So right now we have 2 or 3 exhibitions that are scheduled within the space, and in between those presentations and exhibitions, we would expect the faculty and the students who are working out of the center to show their work as well. As part of the development piece, so Scott was talking about the different hats I wear, I also became a developer. And so I started running around trying to extend the lease and the subtenant. So when you walk into the space, everyone has a similar vision and mission in terms of why we're here, why we're in the city of Detroit. So our tenants that that are on the 2nd floor with us is AI Michigan, and as most of you know, we have an AIAS student chapter, Urban Land Institute, Soil Management, which has a bunch of our alumni, and NOMA, which is National Organization of Minority Architects. And this might not seem like a big deal to you, but I've looked and I've done research in terms of other precedents. There is nothing else that exists like this in relationship to an academy where there is such alignment with the professional arm. And again, what I'm excited about is that I have no idea what it means, and I don't want to even speculate, but the notion that you could be running a studio and you might be talking about, stormwater management, and you can pull someone from SME into your critique and say, can you give me some guidance, because they actually are doing it on the ground floor. Their whole shop will be field operations. So that kind of adjacency, I think, offers us a very unique situation to elevate the work, not only from a learning standpoint, but how does it work it out into the world? I'm doing okay on time. The other thing that I want to focus on is, again, you all are assets. And so when we think about the idea of developing a center in Detroit and the relationship between us and the city and the foundations and the organizations and the political structure, Again, I want everyone here to know that it was easy for me to walk into these rooms with Dan Gilbert or with Kresge Foundation and talk about the intellectual capital that I have at my fingertip. You know, I have 800 brilliant students who are extraordinarily passionate about design, civically and socially engaged. And so those, you know, you all became part of the portfolio in terms of making this project happen. The other thing that I would focus on is the institution. So the Lawrence Tech, Dr. Maudgill and Dr. Vaz have been extremely supportive. When I arrived here 4 years ago, I told them about this idea, and Dr. Maudgill said, great, Godspeed, good luck, I have no money, so you better learn how to fundraise. So that was one of the first things that I started learning how to do, and really extending my network and telling the story of what we're doing here at Lawrence Tech that sometimes doesn't get portrayed. Another thing that has been mentioned to me, if you look at other academies that are in Detroit, is we're in terms of our agility and our lack of resources at times allows us to be much more lean and tactical about how we run a studio. And so the return on an investment, if a corporation supports our studio, the return is much greater than maybe another academy who has a lot of resources and doesn't utilize them efficiently. I think I just summarized this, but what are we doing well already? That was one of the things that I decided is, you know, these are things that I'm building on. Like other post-industrial cities similar to Detroit, there's a lot of people doing great work. My overarching critique is that different organizations come into a city, architects, designers, ecologists, and they start their own startup without really understanding if someone next to them is doing it better or well. And so how do we start to share those resources? And that's what I was doing in terms of the catalyst of the programs that we're doing here in the college in Southfield and how those can be transplanted into the city. We talked a little bit about the institutional support and resources. And then, you know, the return on investment, again, it's to me a no-brainer that the students of architecture and design should be at least 2 semesters studying in the city of Detroit. It's 15 minutes south of here, and it becomes a way in which you can understand the true impact of your creative skills. This is an image, again, about how do I consolidate the 4 programs into one center. So these are some of the academic pieces that we've been teaching in the city currently. And so I'm going to focus just quickly on a couple of projects from Detroit Shop. This was the work that I'm showing next was Peter Bogart and myself co-taught the studio. But these are all the other faculty who have taught within the Detroit Shop pedagogy. So we had a space before our current space. We were in the Chrysler House, and we worked on some of the development plans for Quicken Loans and Bedrock. So at that point, Dan Gilbert had just purchased his 11th skyscraper, and so I went to him and said, is there any way you would consider giving my students and I free rent, free parking, and then potential access to a conversation with you about design and what you think about your development plan? Because quite honestly, they really didn't have a clue on what they were going to do. So we became part of the conversation. It was, you know, a more paper architecture, but it definitely allowed us to have a critical conversation with them about some of the decisions they had made. The students were very, very, not confrontational, but very challenging. And I think that they appreciated that kind of conversation. In fact, since we had this kind of collaboration, they have reached out to other universities, and now it's part of their protocol is to include an academy in terms of some of the change in policy and development of larger building stock. So this is from Emma Zatkoff and Melly Epteff, and basically this was the first time we ran this studio, which was interdisciplinary. It had architecture, interior architecture, interaction design, graphic design, urban design, and business management students within the studio. And so we try to create different teams so each person felt as though they had an expertise to bring to the table. So, I mean, really, a lot of the questions and the things the students were interested in the studio was, how do we reclaim an existing building, have a sensitivity to what its original use was, embodied energy, and then how do we create something that's more engaging, return on investment, As you know, if you know Peter Bogard, Professor Bogard, you know, the return on investment was huge, so the financial piece was a large part of the conversation. This was aligned with one of the competitions for the Hudson site, and they actually had priced this out, Quicken Loans and Bedrock, this particular temporary structure, which would be aligned with the M1. This entire canopy structure would collect lumens, and it was wired with Wi-Fi and technology, so when you walked into it, you could use your cell phone and access, and there was coffee and other ways to kind of sit and lounge. So again, being tactical between what we do as an academy, because there's times where it would be much easier just to stay in Southfield, to be quite honest. But I really do believe that as students develop those skills and alongside with the mentorship and expertise of their faculty member, you really do have an understanding of the relationship that you have to the city and your power and impact that you can make in terms of critical thinking and creative discourse. Another program that we have been developing for the past 2 years is a pre-architectural curriculum. I was very critical, again, when I came here, I looked around an audience like this, and you know, there was less than 1% of African Americans in the audience, and we live 15 minutes away from one of the largest population of African Americans. So we started teaching at Deines High School and developing a curriculum that might become a way in which students could bring their math and science skills up, as well as being exposed to critical thinking and some design process exposure. It's definitely been a learning curve. Kristen and Chris have been extremely instrumental in that piece as well. But other faculty have also lectured and given talks. But the students, I think being in the midst of where many of them live, these kind of charrettes and exercises that we would have that allow them to envision what their school would look like. We did have a real grant where it wasn't some kind of fantasy. We really could make suggestions to Skill and Foundation for a new basketball court or raised gardens. So as they were drawing and sketching, you know, it was just wonderful to see that this became a tool in which they could communicate and be critical. And they were extraordinarily vocal about what their needs were and very concerned about safety and lighting and all the things that anyone else would be concerned about. But they felt as though this course and this class in general, they articulated that they felt like they had a voice and that the design process allowed them to have that voice. They also walked around the school and decided, I think there's areas that we could create an intervention, something creative, and so they designed a series of murals in the cafeteria. We projected their sketches onto the wall. There was 12 of them that collaborated, and each person had to contribute to the overall composition. And this is a video that we had made for last year. We presented at NOMA, and it does explain how, from a student's perspective, the relationship of this studio and how it made a meaningful difference in their lives. If I can get it to go, let me do this. Of course, it worked earlier. I'm not a PC user. How do I get to this little corner? Does anyone? Got it? Here? This one? In the middle. This one? This way? Yeah. Yes. Oh my Lord. But it's not working though. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna do this. Oh, it's frozen. No, I have it on the desktop. I can play it, but it's now. Hi, technical difficulties. It's not doing anything now.
Go down to your bottom bar, hit PDF. I'm pushing, it's not doing anything. This is.
You knew this was going to happen today.
Always.
Should I unplug this? Do you think this is irritating it? Is it working? Oh.
This initiative was started by the students. The students said, we're tired. We're tired of seeing inaction in our community. We're tired of having to deal with abandoned houses, having to walk by these houses dark at night and walking home from school. We're tired of the crime in the community. We're tired of what it's come to look like. And the students said, if the adults aren't going to do anything, we're going to do something.
All the time I hear people complaining about how Detroit is now and stuff like that, and about how awful it is, but I've felt like for a while now that why would you complain about something when you have the power to do something about it?
And that's the bottom line, is they've said we've had years of inaction where nothing's been done, and so who better to do something than students that live in the community, have seen the struggles of the community, have seen the promise and the resilience of the community as the leaders of tomorrow to say, this is our vision.
So basically what we looked at doing was how can we take kind of an architectural education typology, I guess I'd say, and plug it into the high school here.
It's a fresh point, fresh time for them to just kind of jump in, and they're getting excited about what we're doing with the program. You know, they have ideas as to uplifting the community.
We were basically trying to help, change the community, trying to, come up with our own special way to change the community through artwork.
Because most of my pictures would be stuff that I want to say, but I really don't say it, or stuff that I want to do, and I really don't. Or I can't because I'm too small or anything.
Instead of speaking words, I feel like you should just show people through art or through your feelings, because sometimes people don't listen, but when they see things and actually pay attention to it, then I feel like it gets the message out there more.
Only we can do it. They should care because we're the future generation and we have to take care of this. If we don't, then what's going to happen to the next generation?
I say art does stop crime, and that's why it's important to me, because I feel this is my crime fighting effort.
Really, seeing the students empowered, seeing them motivated to make a difference, and to be able to be empowered and equipped to have the tools to actually put that into action, that's why we come to work.
And that video was done by one of our adjuncts, Dean Storm, who was also one of my students at the University of Detroit. And then we're working on another one as well. Let's see here. There we go. So in addition to teaching in the classroom, there's also just basic exposure to art. We took them to the DIA, to CoAD, to some of the buildings downtown. And many of the students who have lived their life in the city, these are 16-year-olds, have never been downtown, never went to the Guardian building, never walked through Hart Plaza. And so there was a really great exposure in terms of a variety of different landscapes and really deep conversations about the built environment. And they were very vocal about wanting to make a change, but not feeling as though they had the intellectual support to achieve a college degree. And so again, this is that gap measure that one of the programs out of the center is that we are seeking other funding for teachers that have degrees in secondary education to collaborate with us, especially to bring up the math and science scores. Just not going to work for me today. Any questions right now as I'm fumbling about the center? Yeah.
Obviously, within the faculty and administration, we talk about this a lot. But the reality is, and the president spoke about this in his talk this morning, that you're almost at $1 million message I think to the students is normally when you have a large development like this with that much money, it's really coming, sad to say, but primarily from tuition dollars, meaning you're paying for it. Think of this as an opportunity, but this is a huge resource that Amy was able to get this money and you didn't have to pay for it. And I think that's significant because obviously the cost of tuition is so incredibly high, and this just brings extra value to it. And for me, that's the thing that, besides all of the academic and opportunity embedded in it, it's a huge deal for the students because it's there for them now, and it didn't come with this kind of added tax, so to speak.
I
It's
appreciate
very
that.
important to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And as he's trying to, it's frozen again, so, I mean, I have about 6 minutes left. The last piece I was going to talk about, I should have just brought my Mac, but I was told that this is a more stable PC and that the Mac would surely do what this is doing right now. But the last piece of the presentation is a piece that we're developing. It's a design incubator. And I'm extremely excited about that because it does take the best and brightest students at Lawrence Tech within the College of Architecture and Design initially. Initially, we'll take 6 students. There we go. Yeah, we'll keep going. There you go. So the design incubator, we received a grant from Hudson Weber for $300,000, and what it's going to do is create an opportunity for 6 fellows who recently graduated from our college, the opportunity to be given seed money, the ability to be aligned with that professional environment that I just described, as well as a mentor. You'll be developing a business plan and given the muscle and the intellectual capital to surround you to achieve opening up a small business. The Hudson Weber grant is specific to the retention of talent and youth in the city of Detroit. It's a huge gap. The demographics, there's a very large void of 18 to 35-year-olds living in the city. And so that's where all of you come in. So again, when I talk about assets and insights, as you're part of my portfolio, I know you're people and you're human and you're living and you're moving and, but these are things that after conversations and getting to know you in this community, these are opportunities that I know that most of you would be excited to pursue, as well as practicing in the city itself. So I've been working with Haj Fleming, who's the president of Brand Camp. And again, this idea of overlapping resources and assets, he just received a grant from the Knight Foundation for community development. And so we're trying to create a business plan that would allow students to start off in the center, again, be given the support that they need to develop a business plan, a product, and then move into the neighborhood or a community that's aligned with his grant. And so you would be actually opening up a business with the reciprocity that you have to stay in the city for 3 years. So there has to be that retention piece. I've seen it firsthand with some of my colleagues in the room where there's 2 or 3 people that might live in the city of Detroit that might live near each other, and the change is massive in terms of the 2 or 3 blocks around them, just based on your network, your investment, your care for the built environment and for people. The other piece of that program is there'll be an ask for you as a young business owner to give back to that community. So if you're opening up a graphic design studio, you might offer someone web design tutorials, or if you're doing product development, you might have someone help you learn how to make and use tools. So there has to be the extension of giving back to that particular community. So as we seed you, it's germinating, and it's a very natural thing. You can keep on going. So some of the programs that we're still developing, so the Fellows Program I just spoke about, we're also being charged as a college, to Jim's point. We have 3 years to make sure this center is sustainable. Again, it's right at the corner of Woodward and Willis downtown, and in Midtown. It's quite expensive. So after 3 years, I have to show some kind of income. And the idea of having memberships that would access the design incubator and maybe be able to access the conference room or the seminar room as a resource is something that we're pursuing. And there's other models to look at in terms of how to set that up. When I just spoke at a conference, the AI National Conference, and there was so many younger architects who want to come to the city of Detroit, and they said, so if we want to be part of something when we arrive, is there anything that we can put our finger on the pulse? And so that's how this idea became something where it becomes a resource for someone who might be outside of the city, who can come in, interact with students, faculty, and the professional arm. These are images of some of the furniture layout for the design incubator. This space is basically surrounded by the professional arm, so AI Michigan, AI Detroit, and Urban Land Institute. So it's a kind of floating space with an embedded ceiling cloud that has technology within it, like screens and projectors, and so you can kind of close yourself off and run a charrette and feel kind of insular but also open. This is still, so it's more about a furniture selection package in the ceiling plane than anything else. It's not built yet, so this is some cheesy image that I was after looking at collaboration space, but really it is going to be a collaborative space that again is a shared resource between faculty, students, and then some of our subtenants as well as our fellows. We are working on a website currently and a press kit which will be published by the end of September. We are anticipating wanting our students to arrive sooner than later, and so the occupancy date it keeps moving. So I don't want to throw anything out, but sometime in October we should be able to move in. And I would, I think obviously the spring will be in there for sure, but it would be great to have students start as soon as we open up the doors. I know Dr. Mogul would appreciate that as well. And then there's a variety of events that we've already scheduled in terms of community engagement. And whenever there's moments that this audience, students and faculty, where you want to overlay anything that you're doing with something else that's happening, that's really what all of the tenants and the community members I've spoken to, they realize that this is a shared asset and that nothing is insular. And so as you see something, if there's a way that you want to overlap your program or your work, just let us know. Chris is the assistant director and has been, again, working really diligent on this project. And I think I've almost killed him. Oh, I'm doing good. Okay. And here's the website if you want to write it down. It's still a draft. Will be done by the end of the week. But it's a nice, again, showcase of faculty work, the existing Detroit studio, Detroit shop, and then any exhibitions that we have. This will be, again, a conduit between the Southfield campus and the Detroit campus. So although this is all about the kind of Detroit revitalization, there's the strong connection and nod back to Southfield always, because none of this would happen if we weren't here in this campus environment with the infrastructure. And then the Detroit Shop website is something you could check out to look at some of the work if that's a studio that you're interested in taking in the future. And thank you. I'm going to hand it to June now, and if there's any questions after, then I think June and I can stand up together. Okay? That way.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yellow. Okay. It's not working, right?
It might work better with PowerPoint. But if the test doesn't work, then I can click through.
Let's see.
Here.
Is the one?
Sideways.
Okay. Okay. I guess I can do that. Okay. I can do that. Yeah. So hello everyone. I think I remember when we had the first lecture. I think we had about 1,000 people. I think 1,000 people showed up. Am I correct, Scott?
It was around that.
Yeah, right. Last week we had about 500 people. Today I see 25 people. So if you go by that trend, we're going to have 12.5 people next week. But anyway, welcome to my presentation. So I'm going to come back to this slide later on. But I can tell you that the woman sitting on the middle, that's not what I'm going to talk about in my presentation. Sorry. Okay, so my lecture is about deconstruction and reformation of either architecture or architectural profession. So I guess I could say that the subheading of my lecture is about PID taxonomy. So I'm going to focus on my lecture around this PID subject matter. So what is PID? I guess there are many ways you could define it. So I'll let you define PID whatever way works for you. I guess one easy definition I can give you today may be PID is about design that supports public interest. So that may be one of 1,000 potential definitions you can come up with. But today I'd like to share maybe another way of thinking about PID, what that means. So that's where the cheese comes in. So I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm not a big fan of cheese. Whenever I eat cheese, it gives me indigestion. and then I usually suffer. And pretty painful. But I don't know how to pronounce this. Parmigiano Reggiano? Is that how you pronounce it? Okay. Thank you very much. So now this is supposed to be the very hard, dense, granular type cheese that I don't know anything about. So where is it from? It's from Modena, Italy. So once upon a time, there was a town called Modena. It's a small town, still exists today. And it's a really small town, basically consists of farmers and small business owners and all. Unfortunately, about maybe 2-3 years ago, there was earthquake. So the earthquake pretty much did it, pretty much destroyed the town. These are some of the images. So sad. Now, the earthquake also hit many warehouses that stored these wheels of cheese. So sorry, it's a sad story. Yeah, no, it's not. That's true, yeah, Jim. It's not supposed to be. Yeah. So don't laugh too much, okay? But anyway, so and this is before the earthquake hit the town. Looks kind of nice, huh? This is what happened after the earthquake. So maybe I wasn't there. I didn't count how many, but you can tell maybe about millions of wheels of cheese about the down and out. Okay, so here are some of the images of sad story. I know, makes you hungry, right? Okay, so each wheel of this cheese weighs about 90 pounds. That's what I weigh, right? 90 pounds. Especially this semester, whenever you suffer like this semester, that's how much I weigh, 90 pounds. But anyway, so the market, the street value of this wheel of cheese is about $1,500. That's a lot of money, right? So this earthquake cost the town about $150 million. Now you think that's not a whole lot of money, but think about Detroit 2 years ago. about 2-3 years ago, Detroit had about $200 million of budget deficit. So people were going crazy. There was a crisis. Okay, what are you going to do? You know, the cheese is their major economy. Okay, so something needs to be done. What are you going to do with this millions of wheels of cheese? Are we going to throw them away? What are you going to do? Okay, if you don't do anything about it, the cheese is going to begin to rot, like the way you see here. So there was, I guess you might say, somebody came to rescue. His name is Chef Massimo Bottura. Is that how you pronounce it? So I guess he was one of those renegade chefs in Italy, especially in Modena, small town in Italy. And that's him. So he's a man of interesting character. I never met him, so I don't know. But that's what I learned from a lot of news articles about him. So he owns this restaurant. Next time when you go to Italy, I hope you visit it and let me know how taste the food is. But anyway, this is his website. There you see, I noticed that never trust a skinner Italian chef. It turns out that he's a very skinny guy. But I guess the people in the town trusted him about something he's going to do. And that's what he did. So what he did, so this is his employees. And his restaurant is right next, on your left, the building on the left of the screen. And his house is about 5 minutes away. So pretty good relationship between the restaurant and his home. And people know each other well, and they take care of each other and so on. So what he did was he created a recipe of risotto using the cheese Parmigiano Reggiano. Obviously, it's a free recipe. And there have many stories about what happened. It was cooked around the world from London to Tokyo and Korea also. All the wheels were sold and no one lost a job. It was recipe as social justice. So that's the image of many of the foods where he used his own recipe from, again, London to Korea. And his story has received a lot of attention internationally, including Forbes magazine. So if you can create a recipe that can address social justice issues, what I call PIR, public interest recipe. I made that up. If you could Google it, you're not going to find it, okay? If you can do that with recipe, why not with your design? So if you could design in a way that support and address social justice issues that you see all around us, and you can use your skills to be able to address social justice issues, right? So PID has received a lot of attention, especially the last 10 years, and it's although there are many practices out there, we don't know too much about PID from research perspectives. So that's why I come in. So we hear a lot about PID, especially the last 10 to 20 years. We don't know like major key trends, major approaches to conducting PID. Who are the key players? What are the major outcomes? What are the common threads that run through all the practices we hear or read about? And what are some examples? So I thought maybe what I could do as an educator researcher, I might focus on PID typologies. Again, I'm thinking of PID more as an educational tool to talk about the meaning of PID, what we can do with the PID to make some changes around the world. So now, before I go further, I'd like to make a distinction between what practitioners do and what educators do. So a guy like me, I'm interested in conducting research. I'm an educator. I'm not really in practice part of the world. But you do need the PID practice and PID research. You need both. So while I'm focusing on research, I like to think of Detroit Studio as a way to, as a conduit or bridge between practice and research. Okay, then where DCDT comes in, okay? Because the Detroit Studio is a part of DCDT, and I need to think about that. So I suggest the red arrow point to PID research, that's me. I'm going to focus on that. While Detroit Studio bring practice and research together in an educational research manner. And hopefully DCDT then will be able to advance practice. DCDT will encourage faculty members, other people, to actually engage in practice, while at the same time supporting research projects to be conducted by me, other faculty members, to advance PID, okay? So that's how I see where DCDT comes in. So, okay, then PID PR is about studying PID through research. Mostly, I'm interested in reflecting on PID. And hopefully the outcomes of this research will help us advance the profession and academia in some way and fashion. So obviously without the grants, I wouldn't be able to do this project, and NCRB supported several part of this project over the years. So PIDPR is about is to address social, economic, and environmental challenges, advance PID practice, and expand the architectural profession. That's how I define PIDPR. And I've conducted 12 studies around this subject matter, used mixed methodology. And today I'm going to share with you one major finding, that is PID taxonomy. And then hopefully we have some time to share some lessons with you quickly. So what is PID? PID is mainly to solve those currently in unsolved or unsolved or undersolved by architecture. And mostly it is very grassroots, bottom-up approaches. And these practices are very socially responsive and inclusive and ethically minded. And practitioners in PID love to address socioeconomic, environmental justice, and equality issues. Why PID? So there are many resources out there that point to the fact that there are about 90% of the population who do not have access to architectural services that you guys, students, will provide. Well, that's a kind of sad story. So we as architects should be able to think about economic, social, and environmental challenges that face many neighborhoods not far from us. So there have been a lot of criticism directed against architecture being irrelevant. So hopefully PID is able to offer few ways to redirect architecture so that we can make it more relevant. Now, given our lack of time, I'm going to go really quickly, introduce these 9 partially overlapping models. Now, I'm not interested in labeling people. I'm using this more as a tool, educational tool, or research tool to understand what PID is all about, and how we can use this more like a sort of like criteria to be able to determine what makes unique, successful PID practice. So quickly, people in this camp tend to focus on social economic justice, such as discrimination, hunger, starvation, prejudice, and so on. The architects resistance group, which was very active 60s and 70s, arguably one of the most well-known examples of this camp. Unfortunately, since then, we don't see too many groups of this nature. That's something that we need to address. People in this camp tend to be highly technically oriented architects who are interested in using the internet as a way to develop systems for designing and building a small structure such as a small house. Again, the mission is to help needy population around the world. So these architects work using digital platform, working with the architects around the world to develop software, hardware, okay, to make it easier for local architects and local organizations to be able to build a small house or what have you. And many of you probably know well, WikiHouse is one of the good examples. But there are many other entities out there right now doing pretty good work. Designers in this camp tend to focus on humanitarian disasters such as earthquake, hurricane, typhoon, and so on. So what architects in this camp like to do is to essentially address everyday needs of people who are in really unfortunate condition. So what these people try to do is to build a very quick, many times quick and dirty, temporary infrastructure, temporary shelter for refugees or the other kinds of people who need help immediately, right away. And we used to have the Architecture for Humanity, which is considered arguably one of the best known examples of this kind. But unfortunately, sadly, they are gone. But nevertheless, there are many small and medium-sized organizations like Architecture for Humanity still around. They're doing pretty good work. Designers in this camp are more interested in building opportunities to promote social interaction, through which they like to encourage people to participate in revitalization projects, mostly trying to help low-income neighborhoods. So there's a thing called SOUP. SOUP is a monthly dinner microfunding program for creative projects based in Detroit and Chicago, other cities. It's kind of spreading around the country. So what usually happens is that people come to a huge warehouse. They bring soup or other kind of soup and salad, share food, and they'll have a chance. And then the several people will have a chance to present their projects for funding. And then the rest of the people will have a chance to review, evaluate, rate the projects. So anyone goes home, there will be one project that will get the funding. Now, I told you about open source system previously. Now, in open source system, usually architects lead the project, lead the process, because they know they have expertise in developing software, hardware. Now, in this model, though, non-designers, lay people are the ones who play a key role. They're the ones who design. They're the ones who work with the people globally, designing things to benefit, again, needy population groups. So next step, design is one of those good examples where non-designers got together, design small-scale digital platform through which they were able to encourage non-designers to submit design proposal step, have a conversation about it, and then select the project, and then discuss how to implement them. Now, in this model, lay people or residents as what I call local knowledge generator, investigator, and architects as technical knowledge generator, investigator, working together as co-partners. They're equal partners, trying to collect the data in a way that benefits both sides. So, for example, residents may focus on activities or meanings of a given place, while architects may focus on physical attributes of the same place. And then they share information and figure out a way to use the information to promote successful placemaking. Now, in this model, architects dedicate a number of hours per week or month, essentially to socially meaningful and responsive projects for needy population. Now, at the moment, usually big firms are the ones who engage in this practice. So there is a, oops. Let me do this first, and then, so there is a 1% group who advocate the idea of spending 1% of architects' time, again, to promote socially meaningful project. Their work has received a lot of attention, including AI's attention. So now there are two key partners trying to encourage small and medium-sized companies to engage in this practice across the country. So let me go back and miss this one. This grassroots design practice. Now, typically small mom-and-pop groups, grassroots groups engage in this practice. And what they try to do is to build alliance among themselves because they don't have many resources going around. So they figure out a way to work together to save resources and so on. They usually focus on small-scale projects, installation, urban farming, and graffiti arts, small-scale design build projects. So there is an organization called the Michigan Urban Farming Initiative. Essentially consists of architects, designers, engineers, environmental scientists, and local volunteers. What they usually do is to buy vacant land, transform them into productive landscape. The revenue coming from those projects then spent on different programs, again, to benefit neighborhood around their project area. So this is the last model, okay? So architects in this model argue that architects as project director, that's something that we as an architect were trained to become, trained to be good at being project architect. Now, these people argue that, things are changing now. We should dump the idea of being effective project director. Instead, we should be able to play a role of facilitator, right? So their argument is that considering the fact that things are changing, such as changing social composition, demographic composition, changing environmental circumstances, architects should be able to play a role of cultivator, curator, and instigator, rather than trying to dictate the project. So that's their argument. So another project that I conducted is to compare these 9 models according to a number of criteria, such as funding, what sort of funding each of these models needs to be able to sustain in the long term, right? We also look into, okay, what key roles architects play. What about the public? What kind of role do they play? What are the key approaches each of these models use to be successful? And I have 50 of those tables that look into and compare, draw distinction among these 9 models. So this is another study that we conducted. Right? I asked study respondents, okay, tell us about what roles architecture play in order to make these 9 models successful. So it turns out 5 roles stood out most highly. So let me introduce what they are. Educator. That means that being able to explain what is going on, what is possible, and how people can participate and how to contribute. Facilitation. It's about ability to manage not just the complex information and process, but also people. Did you know people are very complex animals? What about convening? Being able to build a long-term professional working relationship, incredibly important. What about consoling? What is that? It's an ability to respond emotionally, sensitively to human emotions. We as a human being has thousands of emotions that you need to be able to deal with in the design and production of built environment. The last one everyone knows is about being able to provide technical knowledge, being able to advise our clients with technical expertise. That we know how to do it, we are good at it, right? So when you go back to this table, it turns out that we do pretty good, we're doing pretty good job educating our students, you, about being very efficient advisor, efficient consultants, right? With the technical knowledge. But we don't really do a good job educating, training students about the other roles. So that's my argument. Okay, so we also looked at other aspects of these 9 models, particularly in terms of strategies. What strategies successful 9 models typically use? So these 4 strategies or tactics stand out most highly. So inversion is about being able to be nimble, being able to swap, change, exchange steps that are required in design and planning. So in a rational model, you start with collecting data and then analyze it and then come up with a solution. If you want to be efficient PID, you got to be able to switch steps, being able to quickly adapt to the situation. Simulation, being able to conduct small-scale experiments so that you're able to test ideas quickly before you expanding your ideas on a large scale. Reciprocity is about being able to understand, being able to put yourself in other people's shoes, or also being able to play more than one role. When you don't have a whole lot of time and efforts and resources around you, you got to be able to play multiple roles. Lastly, research in action, being able to conduct small-scale research and design research, sometimes almost simultaneously, so that you get a quick feedback, and then being able to go through a series of iterations. Hopefully then your design will be highly grounded, and hopefully it'll be more meaningful. So a couple lessons. One of the lessons maybe architects can do, should do far more than what they normally do in a design form. Number 2, there is a growing list of other way of doing architecture. I think we need to learn about it. We need to be able to educate about that. Couple challenges. Okay, what all these things mean to curriculum that we are dealing with, and how we educate architects and students about what is happening out there. So this is my suggestion. Perhaps let's just assume that you're in your studio working on a senior housing project, okay? So through multidisciplinary coursework, I hope that you are able to define what the issues are. People even think about design. What the issues are, what on earth, why we have to study senior housing? What are the issues? what are the fundamental issues? What is the meaning of senior housing before you even get to design? And then when you go to PID workshops, I hope that you are able to learn things like, okay, what is the industry behind senior housing? What is fundamentally important infrastructure that required to build a good, successful senior housing? Again, the issue there is not design, it's about system, understanding system, and explore system that makes sense. So by the time you get to studio, I hope my expectation is that your design is going to be well informed, because you're going to be able to apply all the lessons, knowledge you gain through PID workshops and multidisciplinary coursework. Now, I can go further. I can say, what about architectural curriculum designed this way? So if I have a lot of money to buy this college, then I can change it, but not going to happen. So I have a brief. I'm done, but I have a couple of brief announcements. Okay, so if you can be patient a little bit. So it's a shameless pitch. So it's going to take just a couple of minutes. So I was honored to be chosen as one of the 6 faculty members across the country by AI National Office to join 6 famous companies around the world. So we went to San Francisco. We had a research summit, that's what they call. Our charge was to help AIA to come up with a national policy on research in practice through collaboration between the academy and profession. That's my area, that's where I'm interested. Now, so SOM, Perkinsville, and Timberlake, Kiara Timberlake, okay. And then the other one was Gensler, and so on. So there were many lessons, but I want to share with you 2 lessons today. Let me give you a little context. So AI is onto something. Now, a couple of years ago, APA, which is kind of counterpart of AIA, they did a massive survey a couple of years ago. In a nutshell, the finding goes like this: how to get around, stay connected, and age in place. Boomers and millennials alike cited the importance of these 3 things as they consider what they want from the places they will live in. So you students sitting in this room, you are the one who will have to address these issues, okay? So one of the first things you have to do is research. You have to do research. You have to understand what these 3 things mean. You are going to be the leaders of 21st century city making, right? Okay, then who could do a better job? Who could do this sort of research more successfully? Architects? Engineers? I think urban designers. They could do a better job addressing these 3 issues, such as transportation, walkability, how to get around. And then when it comes to how to stay connected, we talk about smart city, density, size of neighborhood, and so on. How to age in place is about public health, sense of community, and so on. So SOM's president came, like I said, and he said this: I regret that I did not study urban design when I was going to school many years ago. It's a true statement. I didn't make it up. So trust me. So I like to leave with you with this slide. So don't become like him, right? So it'll be good for you if you pursue MOUD. I don't want to call it MUD, MUD. MOUD stands for Master of Urban Design, MOUD, okay? Mode, how to pronounce it, mode? I don't know. I hope that you consider doing MArch and MOUD to benefit your career. Thank you. Oh.
Hello, hello. Before it runs out, there is a design incubator workshop right in the auditorium, in the gallery. There's coffee, cookies. More information about, nothing's working today.
Use this one.